Ayman, what gives you encouragement from the contributions from leaders we've heard today, and where do you feel greater action is needed moving forward?
Hi, I am representing the Asia Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism, APRSM, today. And I think the UN's focus on ending vaccine inequity between the first world and third world countries gives me great hope for concentrated efforts in equitable distribution of vaccines. And similarly, the UN's recognition of the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 and other planetary crises on women in all their diversities also gives hope for very concrete action. And I work with farmers movement in Pakistan, and particularly with small and landless women farmers. So I would like to use this opportunity to point out some very obvious gaps in food and agriculture. And working with grassroots communities, it is very alarming for us to see that in order to address the climate emergency and achieve the goal of net zero emissions by 2050, the neoliberal agenda is still kind of pushing for false corporate-driven solutions such as green finance and monocultures in agriculture. And agriculture is blamed for being the highest contributor to greenhouse gases. However, there's a need to realize that the onus of that does not fall on small and landless farmers. Instead, it falls on the fossil fuel-driven industrial agriculture, which can never grant us food sovereignty or climate justice. And there's a need to realize that industrialization in agriculture is only eroding biodiversity. It's co-opting indigenous knowledge for corporate profit, and it's allowing corporations to grab land and resources from rural communities that are critical for their lives and livelihoods. And in Pakistan also, we see that these false solutions are in abundance and only increasing day by day. So, for instance, the ethanol fuel requirements of the first world countries, which are basically designed to cut down on carbon emissions, but are causing a surge in sugarcane production in Pakistan. So with the result that agricultural land use is shifting from wheat, cotton, and food crops to sugarcane. And the effect that this has is that it's snatching away the livelihood of our women agriculture workers. Similarly, BT cotton, which is a GMO variety of cotton, has virtually wiped out local cotton varieties. And since the past few years, disease-related crop failure has severely reduced yields. And again, the women cotton pickers, the agriculture workers, bear the brunt of this catastrophe, this never-ending catastrophe. And we should also look at the fact that in agriculture, in health, education, and beyond, it is actually the widening grasp of the intellectual property rights regime that continues to cause this devastation and destruction. And the vaccine inequity that we talked about is itself rooted in IPR laws. And, a lot of activists have talked about the need for an immediate patent waiver for the transfer of vaccine technology to third world countries. And while we're on the same note, intellectual property rights over seeds and other genetic resources should also be abolished, because these resources are actually the intellectual and cultural heritage of farmers and indigenous communities, and not the private property of transnational corporations as is being made out to be. Pakistan, can you hear me?
I can, go ahead. We just lost you. Just wrap it up for us.
Okay, yeah. So the thing is that, how can we expect to achieve goals 2 and 8 for zero hunger and decent livelihood if corporations continue to patent productive resources of farmers as they're doing, and increasingly, it's just increasing this attack on resources. And in the end, there was this talk about multilateralism, and I would just like to wrap up and say that as part of the commitment to multilateralism, we should call for clear and just models for, truly inclusive processes of global decision making that should meaningfully engage all civil society actors, and that is to ensure that multilateralism will actually be rooted in development justice and human rights, and that it will entail cooperation and not only competition.